Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Political Vigilante. My name is Graham Elwood. There is the blue light of justice and truth shining on the world. There's an article here in the Intercept. Protests in Iran took many by surprise, but not Iranian labor activists. This just came out January 6th. So I'll go into the details here. It's a really fascinating story because they're talking about the riots in Iran. And this, I'm assuming this Murtaza Hussain is in Iran reporting, and stuff the mainstream media is not covering. They're talking about it, and Iran's going nuts, and the American empire needs to go to war with Iran. So we need to paint these uprisings in whatever way that we can. This article goes into that they're actually coming from working class people. And I'm going to read some stuff in here, and it's going to sound kind of familiar. It's going to sound really familiar. So, over the past week, tens of thousands of people in dozens of cities across Iran have braved bullets and tear gas in a public outpouring of dissent against the country's ruling establishment, like we have here. Videos of we're not a democracy, remember that. Videos of demonstrations shared on social media have shown protesters smashing government-owned banks, tearing down posters of government officials, and at times calling for the end of clerical rule in the country. Wow. At least 22 people are reported to have been killed since the unrest began December 28th, with human rights groups saying hundreds more were detained by security forces. The outbreak and nature of the unrest may have taken many analysts of Iranian politics by surprise. Rather than emerging from liberal Tehran, these protests appear to have originated in working-class conservative cities and towns that the Islamic Republic likes to depict as its core constituency. One group of people, however, has long expected such an outbreak of discontent from the economically disadvantaged people in the areas: Iranian labor activists. Quote, working people in Iran have been dreaming of a better life for 4 decades, but today, ordinary people have to work 2 or 3 jobs simply to survive. Wow, that sounds familiar. People have to work 2 or 3 jobs in America. We have this new gig economy because there's no full-time work. And there's really good jobs in this country, but you have to have advanced degrees. So if you grew up and didn't have an opportunity at college, guess what? You don't have a crack at the good jobs. You got the 10 and 11 and 12, $15 an hour jobs maybe. But you're not getting health benefits. You're not getting union wages. You're not getting all of the benefits that come with organized labor, which, if you look at how organized labor has been treated in this country, the people that run this company, the United Company of America, are capitalists, obviously. So anytime that labor starts to organize, since the 20s, they have said that, laborers are socialists, they're communists, Bolsheviks, whatever. Because labor unions are bad for unregulated capitalism. And it's happening here in Iran. Mahid Kuteshtejinahad, my apologies, a longtime Iranian trade unionist now living in Canada who is active in the international solidarity movement for workers' rights in Iran. Many people inside and outside Iran may be shocked by what is going on, but trade unionists have been warning for the past 10 years that there will be an uprising against the ruling class and the kleptocracy. Unlike the 2009 Green Movement, which was largely a product of the educated, urban Tehrani middle class, the recent protests in Iran appear to reflect the anger of the country's working class masses. As Iranians grapple with high inflation, unemployment, and economic corruption, the burden of these problems have fallen most heavily on young people who lack the political connections to survive, let alone raise their standard of living. In America, as I've said numerous times, 63% of the country doesn't have $1,000 in savings. Everybody's working 2 and 3 jobs. And that's worked for a while to keep people so overworked and distracted that they don't see how they're being screwed over. But what happens when the recession hits and people can't work and they can't get health care and they try to get their medical needs paid for on crowdfunding sources? Then what? What's going to happen? $25,000, whatever. It's, well, the stock market, the Dow Jones is its biggest ever. Is anybody getting this? 1% of the stocks of stock owners own 70% of the stocks. So the Dow spike isn't going to help regular people. It's not going to help anyone that's got like, oh, I've got 500 shares of stock or 1,000 shares of stock. No, it's the people that own the controlling shares of everything. So the stock market is rigged. It's going to happen here. We're going to have labor riots. And that's why we've had so many conversations on this show about the third party needs to be a labor party. There used to be so many different labor parties in this country. There needs to be a labor movement, because the corporate state here has spent the better part of 4 or 5 decades really getting rid of unions and always demonizing them as communists. And then we're in this new McCarthy era, Russia. They fixed the election. They spent $100,000 on Facebook ads. Oh no, not $100,000. Oh, $100,000 is so much more than the $1.5 billion that Hillary had. It's ridiculous. While the Green Movement was rallying around reformist politics and its leadership in Mir Hussein Mousavi, the latest protests have seen chants cursing just about every actor and political affiliation in Iran. There were frequent chances of death to Rouhani, referring to Iran's reform-minded centrist president, Hassan Rouhani, whom young Tehranis have reportedly poured into the streets to support. In response to the protests, 5 Iranian labor organizations released a statement calling for an end to poverty and misery in the country and urging the government to enact economic reforms. But while labor groups have supported the protests, it is unclear to what extent they have been involved in actually directing them. The ability of independent civil society groups to publicly organize in Iran is greatly constrained by the government. This is interesting. During the 1979 Iranian Revolution, labor organizers helped play a decisive role in the fall of the Pahlavi monarchy, particularly oil workers, whose decision to go on strike in the late days of the revolution brought the country's economy to a halt and helped seal the fate of Mohammad Reza Shah. Following the revolution, the new clerical members of the Islamic Republic quickly moved to marginalize labor groups. The controlling elite. Does this sound familiar? Like Iran is this crazy Muslim bunch of terrorists. The same problems we're having. A ruling elite class. The 1%ers run this country, not you and I. Following the revolution, the new clerical rulers of... I already read that. Whoa. Workers today are allowed to organize government-approved Islamic labor councils, but the bodies are widely viewed as being co-opted by the state and unable to effect genuine change. That's how the power does it. They get their corporate people inside the labor unions, and that's what they do. That's fascinating. The ferocious repression against workers seeking to form unions explains why the frustration can only express itself in this form. And while I do not advocate violence of any kind, I think there needs to be strikes. I think one of the ways to resist is to just say no. If we had mass strikes, we would see mass change. When you shut stuff down, when you make the powerful people, the elitists, unable to generate money off of your labor, you have power. Those billionaires that control the stock market, they're making all that money off of your labor. That's how it works. To some degree, the economically based nature of the protest could potentially militate in the government's favor by dividing the urban political opposition from the working class conservative regions currently taking part in the unrest. None of the Green Movement supporters, who are mostly from the educated middle class, have come out in support of the protests because they see more of a future in Rouhani's policies than any other alternative, even if they are unhappy with the regime. That's why, rich neoliberals don't fight hard for $15 an hour because they don't need it. I have neoliberal friends of mine in show business. They don't need $15 an hour because they got nice union-paying writing gigs for TV shows and stuff like that. They're not out there in the middle of the country seeing how hard it is to survive. The protests have a clear class dimension. They are coming from a segment of young people who feel they have nothing left to lose. And this is the thing that the powerful always underestimate. They repress and push people down and take away rights and deregulate and take away money and health care. What do people do if they can't pay for health care? What are you going to do? Those people in wheelchairs that the police carted out of the Capitol earlier last year? That's what's going to happen. So it's really interesting. It's really interesting to see this happen. And if it's happening in Iran, it can happen here. We need real labor reform. We need labor to get together because labor unites everybody. It doesn't matter what party affiliation or your religion or whatever. Everybody needs a good job. Everybody needs benefits. Everybody needs time off. Everybody needs sick days. Everybody needs good health care. Everybody needs these things. So if labor comes together in this country, it could change. It could change things. But thanks for watching and listening to the show, you guys. So many ways to support the show. The free ways, liking and subscribing and sharing the videos. If you're listening to this on iTunes, giving positive reviews on iTunes and posting those on all of your social media. Of course, there's patreon.com. where you get bonus content, you get to suggest articles, you really get to have a hand in shaping the show and what we talk about and how it grows, which you guys have helped me grow immensely. Immensely? Not a great sentence. It's a little late. I just did a show at the Improv. I'm maybe a little tired. But you guys are awesome. Thank you for watching and listening. And my name is Graham Elwood. And together, we're going to make Gotham great.